Israel reportedly launched a large strike package, close to 80 aircraft or more, in an operation described as Days of Repentance, beginning around 2 a.m. Planning the approach to Iran was not just a matter of drawing a line on a map. Any viable route would require careful timing, aerial refueling calculations, deconfliction of multiple formations, and coordination to traverse airspace corridors that could include Jordan, Syria, and Iraq. Even the return leg had to be treated like its own mission. To reduce the risk of aircraft being targeted on the way out, Israeli planners would likely factor in suppression of air defense threats along the broader transit corridor, especially in Syria and Iraq, so that damaged or low-fuel aircraft had the best chance of making it home without being forced into a predictable path. The strike plan described here can be understood as 3 waves, each with a distinct purpose. Wave 1 focuses on blinding and weakening Iranian air defense by hitting radars, surface-to-air sites, and command nodes. Wave 2 shifts to limiting Iran's ability to respond by targeting ballistic missile infrastructure. Wave 3 concentrates on reducing Iran's ability to sustain future launches by striking military manufacturing and logistics. A central theme of the approach is standoff engagement, hitting targets while avoiding deep penetration into Iranian airspace. That is where weapons like the rockets are framed as critical, because they allow aircraft to release from safer positions while still reaching protected targets. The objective is not only to reduce the risk to pilots, but also to keep the strike package intact if Iran attempts interception during the withdrawal. The aircraft mix described as the tip of the spear centers on F-35s for high-end penetration and targeting, supported by F-16s for air defense and multi-role tasks, and F-15s for heavier ground attack loads. The distances involved are substantial, around 1,600 kilometers, roughly 1,000 miles, so the mission design assumes the presence of aerial refueling tankers positioned to support both the outbound and inbound legs. The standoff weapons referenced include the Blue Arrow long-range supersonic missile and the ROKS extended standoff air-to-surface missile. The logic is that long-range weapons compress the time defenders have to react while also reducing the number of times aircraft must approach the densest air defense rings. Tankers are not just range extenders, either. They also provide a margin if aircraft have to maneuver, loiter, or respond to an unexpected air-to-air event. ROKS is described as a next-generation standoff ballistic-style strike weapon with an unusual feature set. It can be controlled and maneuvered by the launch platform's crew right up until impact. That enables mid-course correction and makes it more resilient against targets that relocate after initial detection. In high-threat environments, the weapon profile is described as relying on GPS-aided inertial guidance to reach the general target area, then switching to imaging infrared in the terminal phase to refine the aim point and strike precisely. Depending on the target type, the desired effect can vary between deep penetration and blast fragmentation. That matters because the first wave targets, radars, command facilities, and air defense nodes, often require either precise component damage or destruction of protected equipment. The broader idea is to degrade Iran's ability to detect follow-on waves, not just to destroy launches. A notable claim here is that Iran's Bavar 373 performed better than expected, and that a combination of Bavar 373 and S-300 assets managed to intercept some drones and missiles. Whether the intercepts were limited or substantial, the point is that Iran's layered air defense network is treated as a real operational factor, not simply a paper capability, and that its performance influences how each subsequent wave is timed and executed. The Bavar 373 is framed as a medium to long-range air defense system that uses Sayyad-4 missiles stored in rectangular canisters. Its architecture emphasizes a phased array radar approach, intended to track both aerodynamic threats, like aircraft and cruise missiles, and certain ballistic trajectories at longer ranges. One radar referenced in this context is the Mirage 4, which Iran associates with a detection range around 450 kilometers and the ability to track large numbers of targets simultaneously. From an operational standpoint, the strike sequence is again divided into 3 phases. The first wave is about disabling the eyes and nervous system of air defense, SAM batteries, early warning radars, and headquarters elements that coordinate the response. Locations described as hit or partially damaged include areas referenced as Tehran, Ilam, and Kutenstan, with Iran acknowledging that strikes occurred and that some systems were affected. The targets in this opening phase are not random. Radar coverage and command connectivity determine how quickly Iran can classify threats, assign interceptors, and coordinate engagements across multiple regions. If those nodes are disrupted, later waves can exploit gaps in tracking and slower reaction cycles, especially when standoff weapons arrive from varying azimuths. The second wave is focused on missile capabilities, specifically the infrastructure that supports ballistic and hypersonic systems. At least 3 missile bases are described as being hit during this phase. The stated intention is straightforward: reduce Iran's ability to conduct immediate retaliatory strikes by damaging launch capacity, storage, or supporting equipment. The narrative also describes drone activity around Parchin, a sensitive military complex on the outskirts of Tehran. In that account, multiple drones were engaged by air defenses, with one allegedly reaching the target area while others were shot down. Whether the strike effect was decisive or limited, the inclusion of drones suggests a method for probing defenses, forcing radar emissions, and creating distraction during more consequential long-range missile arrivals. The third wave shifts from immediate, fight tonight, targets to the backbone of future capability: manufacturing, preparation facilities, barracks, and logistics hubs. Sites named in this context include Kadiri Barracks and Hassan Khan Castle, described as linked to missile production and preparation. Additional targets mentioned include a Sapir Air Force Logistics Center and Imam Ali Barracks, with the purpose of disrupting command support and the movement of materiel. This phase is less about dramatic explosions and more about long-term attrition. Even if launches survive, damage to manufacturing and supply chains can slow replenishment, degrade reliability, and force Iran to divert resources into repair and hardening. A campaign built around repeated waves depends heavily on whether the defender can restore capability faster than the attacker can repeat the cycle. The strikes are also framed as being linked to Iran's more advanced missile families, including Fateh 1 and Fateh 2. In the description provided, these systems are portrayed as distinct from conventional ballistic missiles because of their ability to accelerate outside the atmosphere and use control surfaces to maneuver, an attribute associated with attempts to complicate interception by Israel's missile defense architecture. Iran's recent strikes against Israel are described as using variants of Shahab-3, a foundational medium-range ballistic missile design using liquid propellant. In practical terms, liquid fuel can impose preparation and handling constraints, but it also reflects the evolutionary base from which many later Iranian systems are derived. The larger implication is that missile families matter as much as individual launch events, because industrial capacity and design lineage shape what can be fielded under pressure. To understand the air-to-air and air defense balance, the description turns to the Iranian Air Force's frontline assets. Iran's tip of the spear is framed as including legacy US origin platforms acquired before 1979, notably around 64 F-4 Phantoms. In this telling, the F-4 remains Iran's primary strike aircraft and a central workhorse for conventional missions. Alongside the F-4S, Iran is described as operating about 40 F-14 Tomcats, another US-made platform that, despite age, still has some theoretical ability to threaten modern aircraft depending on sensors, missiles, and the engagement geometry. Iran's smaller group of MiG-29 fighters, around 30 aircraft, is presented as a Russian-supplied component originally designed with the F-16 in mind. Air defense is presented as the second major pillar, highlighted by the S-300, described here as an $800 million system with interception ranges around 120 kilometers, about 75 miles, for many target types. A ballistic trajectory reference is also included suggesting extended reach under certain profiles, though the key takeaway is that these systems are intended to form a wider engagement zone around critical sites and population centers. The text lays out a simplified step-by-step model of how the S-300 family works as an integrated network. First, a long-range surveillance radar, referred to as Big Bird, detects and tracks targets, with a capability described as tracking hundreds of objects at once in real time. That track data is passed through a command and control node that determines whether the track is friendly or hostile and then selects an engagement response. Once the command element decides to engage, or receives authorization from higher-level command, it assigns the target and instructs the appropriate launchers to prepare and fire. Missile selection depends on range, altitude, and the target's flight profile. A common engagement method described here is the firing of 2 missiles per target, increasing the chance of a kill if one interceptor fails or is spoofed. After launch, the interceptors are guided toward the target using the system's engagement radar and continuous updates based on the target's real-time movement. The emphasis is on constant interaction across the network. Detection, classification, assignment, launch, and guidance occur as a single chain. In a saturated scenario, the quality of this chain, especially the speed of handoffs and the resilience of radars, can determine how many incoming weapons leak through. For low-flying threats such as cruise missiles and UAVs, the description references a mobile last-line defense layer, something akin to a point defense system that can track and engage smaller, lower-altitude objects. In that model, the command post cues mid-range or point defense fires to destroy targets before they reach critical infrastructure. The claim is that the network could track up to 300 targets and engage 60 to 80 simultaneously, while guiding up to 160 missiles at once, numbers that illustrate how the system is intended to function under pressure, assuming sufficient connectivity and radar performance. Taken together, the strike concept described in this text relies on 3 interacting ideas: standoff weapons to minimize exposure, wave sequencing to degrade defenses before hitting missile and industrial targets, and air refueling supported reach to sustain long-distance operations. The defending concept hinges on layered radar and missile integration, systems like BAVAR 373 and S-300, paired with legacy fighter aircraft that can complicate the picture if they can be brought into the fight at the right time and with sufficient warning.